Howdy. We are, as of recording this, 1 week away from the Vikings Bears first week one Monday Night Football game. And if you're like me, growing up, or just a normal, sane individual, you didn't really pay much attention to football in the offseason. Maybe you got one or two headlines on what happened. Maybe you saw who your team drafted. But I kind of wanted to help people who haven't been following the offseason day by day get a basis of what their teams will look like, what happened in the offseason, what their training camps have been like, what they drafted, who they added, to give y'all a basis of what to expect and how excited you should be for your team. Because I know when I was growing up, no one ever really went in depth. They just kind of rehashed what happened last year. Like if the Patriots were good last year, they'd be like, "Oh, the Patriots are going to be really good." They wouldn't say like what changed or anything. They would basically, like, if a team was bad, they gave them no room for them to be better. Like all these head honchos predictors, they would always say, "The Jaguars were bad last year, so they're going to be bad this year." They never really saw the nuance of what happened in the teams changing and the like. So I decided, since one, I'm a Vikings fan, I would make a video. But also, when I was growing up, I remember hearing about when other people would talk about my team, and they would get things wrong about them. And that would be really frustrating to me, right? I will always be screaming at my screen, telling these people I don't know to, "Hey, you're wrong about this. Understand my team." So what I did is I went in and I did my research on the Chicago Bears. I looked into their offseason. I looked at what people had to say about it. Not as much like the Colin Cowherd, Schefter types. More the local beat writers like Courtney Cronin and the like. There was this one beat reporter who I really thought was fantastic, that I really looked into for his thoughts on Caleb Williams' training camp, which I'll get into. But I like to think I did my good research on it. So hopefully, this is my first time recording something like this, the video will be long and comprehensive. It's not going to be one of those short 15-minute videos. So buckle in, right? You can kind of listen to this in the background, especially when I'm not talking about your team. I don't expect you to listen to when I talk about like the other team. I didn't. I would always skip through. But I will be talking about both the Vikings and the Bears. It's not like I'm favoring one, which I do have a favorite. You can see the flag. But I want at least to give both teams a fair shakedown. Having said that, I've blabbered on enough. Let's get into the Vikings-Bears preview, right? So I want to start with the Bears, right? Because right now, what I've looked into is all fresh in my head. I want to go on with it, right? The Bears had it seems like the third year in a row, they had a very exciting offseason. And I know Bears fans are very much jaded on that, right? Being told the team's going to be good when it hasn't. But I personally think this Bears offseason was like the best one. And I before I went into this, I was saying, nah, three-peat offseason champs, who cares? No, this year they made some substantial changes. They hired a new head coach, Ben Johnson, stolen from the Lions, right? New ex-Lions offensive coordinator. They're hoping Ben Johnson will actually coach Caleb Williams, unlike Matt Eberflus, who, if y'all didn't know, he wasn't even watching film with Caleb Williams. That's ridiculous. Like, how can you expect your young rookie quarterback to develop if he can't even watch film? He doesn't know what he's looking for. But, yeah, they hired They hired Ben Johnson. And they also changed some things. One thing that I actually think is much more important than Ben Johnson, which he is important, don't get me wrong, their offensive line, specifically their interior. They made some changes. They traded for Joe Thuney. They added... Well, I'll get into the offensive line a little bit later, but they made a lot of changes this offseason. And they, I think, are actually going to take a step forward. Caleb Johnson has very much a coaching style where he encourages mistakes, which I actually kind of like, right? He will be very critical of his players, but he will cause them to make mistakes so they can fix them. He doesn't just sit there and be like, oh, we're good enough. No, he wants the team to be as good as they can be. And I respect that, right? So I think the Bears have a lot to look forward to. The Vikings have kind of a different thing with their head coach. They extended him, right? They liked him. They also extended their general manager. So the Vikings and Bears have kind of separate things, right? The Vikings are happy with their coach, and the Bears have a brand new coach, but they're both happy, right? This year, the both teams have honestly pretty similar expectations. They both want their quarterbacks to take a step forward. The Vikings, they want to know that their quarterback isn't garbage, right? Like, that's a big if, right? They don't know. In that national championship game in Michigan, he didn't look all that good. But I digress, right? I think from a Bears perspective, they want to be competitive all throughout the season and be right in the running for a wild card. I think given last year's performance and the talent on this team, they're really looking to take a step, right? This is, in many ways, Ryan Poles as a GM's like last stand, right? If the team doesn't take steps forward, I think he's going to be on the hot seat. I know he gets a lot of things done, but at the end of the day, they've had a lot of losing seasons. So, but I think if they can really take a step forward and really start to coach and instill a new culture that Ben Johnson wants, I think that'll be fantastic for the Bears. And I think that's reasonable to expect. The Vikings, I know other national media will tell you like, oh, they just want to be all right. No. If you ask any real Vikings fan, they'll tell you we want to win a playoff game. 2 out of the past 3 years, Kevin O'Connell's led 14-win season and a 13-win season, gotten them to playoffs, and they lost to the Daniel Jones Giants, and they got embarrassed by Stafford and the Rams. They want to know that their coach of the year is capable of taking them to the next step, as well as they want to see J.J. McCarthy. They want to make sure that he's good and he's the answer, right? He sat out the entirety of last year. There's a lot of nervousness because it feels like this is a roster built to win now, right? These players are not the youngest. It's not a young roster, so if they're going to make moves, they have to do it. J.J. McCarthy has to hit the ground running. Both of these quarterbacks. So, essentially, Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy are the players to watch for both fan bases, right? The quarterbacks, the second-year quarterbacks, they're what everyone wants to see, right? Because Caleb Williams, there were 2024, there were 6 quarterbacks drafted in the top 12. 6. And I think it's very reasonable to say that Caleb Williams had the second most disappointing season out of them. He showed flashes. There's talent. You can tell there's a reason he was picked number 1 overall. But he was inconsistent. If you take just his stats, just watch his games, besides those flashes, he played poorly. But he was being coached by Matt Eberflus. So you got to give him some slack. I don't think any quarterback would succeed given that guy. Right? And J.J. McCarthy had the most disappointing season of the 6 quarterbacks because he was injured all year. He played 1 preseason game, everyone got excited, and then next day his meniscus is broken. Amazing. Right? Both of these quarterbacks need to take a step for their teams to do well and for them to be happy and satisfied with them. Right? Let's talk about how they did in camp, right? I know that's not the most smooth transition, but, right, what's it looking like for these players? Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson has, like I said before, taken a very critical approach to him, right? He wants him to make mistakes so that they can be corrected. He doesn't want to patch anything. He wants to really do it right. At least that's what I'm getting. He's told the media, be patient. Our cats are having interesting times. He's told the media, be patient with him. Don't expect him to know everything, right? So many times, a number 1 overall pick quarterback gets thrown into the flames, and when he doesn't excel immediately, people start to question them. So be patient. There's still a lot for Caleb to learn. He has to break bad habits that he developed last year under Eberflus. But Ben Johnson has stated multiple times that he's optimistic that if any quarterback is up to the task, it's Williams, right? He played in the preseason. He had that one super good preseason game. So, I mean, If you're a Bears fan, you should feel good about that. I don't know how much preseason really means. To me, it doesn't mean much, but it's something. The Vikings have had kind of a different outlook with J.J. McCarthy. They've just been saying he's meeting expectations. Yes, he's had ups and downs, but he's never had a horrific day. And all the beat writers, they all can point to the last day they got to see him truly at practice. That was a Patriots-Vikings joint practice, where, by the way, Drake May looked really good, apparently. So now I've got him on all my fantasy boards. But anyways, J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings offense manhandled the Patriots defense so badly that Mike Vrabel, who had initially not planned to send out his starters for the second preseason game, he sent them out there because he told them, hey, y'all aren't ready. Y'all need to hash these things out. So Vikings fans right now are over the moon excited for it. However, it's just training camp. Anthony Richardson had a fantastic training camp the past 2 years, and now look where he's at. Right? Just not much you can see. Right? Maybe Kevin O'Connell's trying to just prop up his confidence and give him softballs. We don't really know. But that is how they're looking up to now. If personally, I would be more optimistic about J.J. McCarthy, but Caleb Williams has more talent. He was picked number 1 overall. He can easily prove me wrong. And honestly, looking at this next game, he will have to, or I don't think he'll have to, right? Because if J.J. McCarthy plays bad, then Caleb Williams doesn't have to play good either. But this next game, quarterback is going to be very important. And I honestly don't want to say either team has the advantage. When you look at them, they're both running new offenses, right? J.J. McCarthy has never truly played under the Vikings offense. The last offense he really ran was the Michigan offense, which is a pro-style offense, but it's not Kevin O'Connell's. And Caleb Williams is now running the Ben Johnson offense. It's completely new stuff. So I think we're both going to learn, or both fan bases are going to learn very much from this first game. I think there's absolutely going to be a lot of overreactions from the first game because there is so many narratives to push from this one game. I think that's why this one got Monday Night Football. The whole world is going to be watching. They're going to know they can push McCarthy is the next Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams is the next Peyton Manning, or if they're both bad, then we got Bus McGee. I think there is a lot. When comparing the two, I should have prefaced my entire conversation by saying I'm going to go position by position, like position group by position group, and compare them, and then at the end I'll say which team I believe is better. But for the first one, I know a lot of y'all will be upset, but I'm just going to call it a wash. Because even though what we have seen of Caleb Williams has not been good, it has been under an Eberflus-led offense, which is, again, an Eberflus-led offense. And then we haven't even seen McCarthy play. He's coming off a year-long season-ending injury. Now, he will be healthy if you have questions about if he's going to be 100%. He's been 100% since March. So, unfortunately for Bears, he's not dealing with injury issues right now. For the quarterback, I'm just going to call it a wash, right? Caleb Williams has the potential to be better. McCarthy has the potential to be better. We don't really know, right? If you had asked me this time last year and had given the assumption that J.J. McCarthy was healthy, I would say Caleb Williams is probably the advantage. He was picked higher. But now that we do have some data, I'm just going to call it a wash because what we have seen of Caleb Williams has been bad, despite, again, Eberflus. So I'm not going to say he's better, but I'm not going to say he's worse either. Now, fortunately for us, the next comparison I want to make is less open-ended, right? We kind of know what we're getting here, right? And it's a supporting cast. The offensive pass catchers, no. Let's talk about the offensive line. I think, to me, the offensive line is the most important position group in all of football. You put Case Keenum behind a competent offensive line, and he's going to go crazy. You put Patrick Mahomes behind a bad offensive line, and you get the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. You get the most recent Super Bowl. He gets demolish. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't have protection, your quarterback is going to look bad. And if you do have great protection, any quarterback will look good. I personally think that's why Sam Darnold looked so good last year. But I digress. The Bears, this offseason, they added Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, and Drew Dahlman. And I honestly think that's in contention for the best offensive moves of the free agency period. I think Joe Thuney is a spectacular player, Pro Bowler. He doesn't seem to be slowing down. That's an amazing guard. Jonah Jackson, when healthy, which I'm going to assume all players are healthy, are going to play healthy throughout the game. When healthy, Jonah Jackson is right there with him, right? They saw their problem. Caleb Williams was getting jumped, and he holds on to the ball a lot. He was getting jumped last year. They needed to protect him, right? So Jonah Jackson there. And then Drew Dahlman is the most highly touted center available in free agency last year. I actually was disappointed the Vikings didn't sign him. That is a spectacular front three. They're going to be rock solid. I don't think there's many better out there than that. However, the tackles, I have a little bit of concern, right? The tackles consist of Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. Now, there is some speculation about whether Braxton Jones will start, but the fact that it's a 50-50 is not good, right? The person behind Braxton's a rookie. I'd be concerned. Darnell Wright, I think he gets a lot of flack, but he isn't as bad as people say. I think both of the years he's been in the league, he's taken steps forward. Or I guess he's taken a step. He's been consistent. He's been solid. You can do much worse than Darnell Wright. The problem I have is Braxton Jones. To me, that dude is a bum, right? So yeah, he technically doesn't give up that many sacks, but just watch him play. He gets pushed back so easily. And you can be like, yeah, but he didn't do it. If I'm Caleb Williams and I'm seeing my tackle get shoved back towards me, and now there's a defensive lineman just running like within 2 feet of me, I'm going to get out of there. That pocket is terrifying. Danger zone. I'm going to be uncomfortable, right? And I wouldn't blame him. There's a dude trying to kill you there. He's Braxton Jones or whoever plays that second tackle spot. That's an Achilles heel. Now, this is me nitpicking a little bit because 4 out of 5 is pretty good for an offensive line, especially these days, all right? Look at what the Titans have. You could do a lot worse. But, man, right? They were so close to greatness. They were right there. Just one more addition, and they would have been so set. I would have felt so much better. Now, they're going to have Micah Parsons lined up against Braxton Jones. They're going to have Aiden Hutchinson, Jonathan Grenard lined up against Braxton Jones. If I'm a Bears fan, that is terrifying, right? Like, Ryan Poles seems like he's bandaging that and hoping that the coaching will get better, but you cannot trust, especially with Ben Johnson having so much left on his plate. To me, that's negligence. Right? They have a good offensive line. It's going to do its job. But when push comes to shove, that one play where it matters, where is Micah Parsons going to be? Where is Aiden Hutchinson going to be? I wouldn't trust that guy. But it's still good. Right? I like the line. I think it's going to be top 10, top 15. I think it's going to do its job. It's a good offensive line, but I'm just mad because it could have been better. It was right there. But, okay, enough me complaining about a honestly good line. Let's talk about the Bears pass catchers, which is, I don't think that has any Achilles heel. I think the Bears pass catchers are a lot better. Last year they were touted as being like top 3 in the leagues. I think this year's is better. Now, yeah, the names aren't as big, right? No Keenan Allen, but I honestly think Keenan Allen at this point of his career, he's kind of washed, right? He's not bad, but I think this year the Bears are in a better place, right? Obviously, they're highlighted by DJ Moore, who I think is an underrated wide receiver 1. I think DJ Moore just hasn't had an opportunity to shine. And this year under Ben Johnson, I think you're going to see a lot of him. I think you're going to hear his name a lot. The wide receiver 2 is one of the better wide receiver 2s in the league. I think he could be wide receiver 1 on some teams. Titans. And then they have second round pick Luther Burden, who in camp, he's been playing really well. Like, everything I hear is like he's been outstanding. He's completely taken over camp on some days. Right, Luther Burden's really good. And he might not even be wide receiver 3. Wide receiver 3 is solid, kind of like under the radar Olamide Zacchaeus. Right? He's a good free agency acquisition. I like him. I think he's a quality guy. And so you have 4 options in wide receiver alone. And that's not even getting to the tight ends. Cole Kmet, who is a solid tight end. Doesn't get talked about enough in terms of like the good tight end conversation. And first round pick, Colson Loveland, JJ McCarthy's best friend. There's no holes here. They are a whole bunch of really solid players. If I'm a Bears fan, I'm looking at these guys and I'm excited. Right? Worst case, like Colson Loveland isn't good, he's a bust. You still got all of these different options. Right? Like, the Bears have a good pass catching group. And I think they did a good job to support Caleb Williams. I think he's going to be in a position to succeed. If he can succeed with Ben Johnson and these pass catchers, they're in a good place, right? And then I think DeAndre Swift is underrated. I think the Bears have a lot of underrated players simply because they haven't had like success winning games, but they've been in them a lot. DeAndre Swift can get them very far. I think he's solid as long as he doesn't get injured. They can rely on him for good running down, setting up the play action, and the like. I think the backup is kind of bad, so if DeAndre Swift gets injured, But we're not going to talk about injuries. We're going to assume we live in a good world where no injuries ever happen and all the players are always healthy because, speculation about hurting is bad. So if I'm a Bears fan, I'm looking at this offense like, whoa, there's some potential here, right? And again, Eberflus, a defensive coach, he is not there anymore. The bad man cannot hurt you. You have the hotshot offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. He is the guy everybody wanted to be their new head coach. For all the teams that lost their head coaches or fired them, they all wanted Ben Johnson, and the Bears got him. There's a lot to be excited about. Now, the Vikings are very similar to the Bears, right? Like, start off with the pass catchers. You have the best wide receiver in football. Some can say Jamar Chase, but I'm a Vikings fan. Let me be Homer, right? Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Adam Thielen, and Jalen Naylor, who was a solid wide receiver 3 last year, with Ty Felton, who they drafted in the 3rd round. That's pretty good. And I think they have a top 10 tight end in TJ Hawkinson and the best blocking tight end in the league, Josh Oliver. Right? They're pretty strong. However, wide receiver 2, Jordan Addison, he's suspended. So he's going to miss the first 3 games. You don't have to include him. Right? I think the Vikings wide receivers pass catchers with Addison are clearly better than the Bears. I mean, Addison, I think, is very underrated. I think a lot of players on these two teams are underrated just because they like to fly under the radar. But I think without wide receiver 2, Jordan Addison, these are comparable. These are absolutely comparable. I'll talk about which ones I think is better a little bit later. And then offensive line. Same story. The Vikings completely revamped their interior offensive line. Honestly, their entire offensive line. Right? I'm sure lots of y'all, we've all seen the Vikings' last 2 games of the season last year. It was pretty bad, right? Sam Darnold got sacked a bajillion times. The pressure was nonstop. Well, Vikings fans, you'll be glad to hear, out of those 5 starting linemen, 4 of them are not starting anymore. Most of them are gone, right? The only one that stays is Brian O'Neill because, I mean, y'all know Brian O'Neill's been a consistent. He's Pro Bowler. He's good. He was not the problem on that line. Then we have Christian Darrisaw, who's coming back from injury, right? Christian Darrisaw's a top 5 tackle. I will not take other arguments. He's elite, right? So having him back likely for week 1 is a big deal. Then here's where the loss of change happened, right? The Vikings changed out Blake Brandel, Cam Robinson, and Dalton Reisner. They swapped them out with Ryan Kelly center, Will Fries, and Donovan Jackson as guard. So Ryan Kelly is all pro. He is getting up there in age, but he's been very good for a very long time. Last year he got injured, and that's how the Vikings were able to bring him on in free agency. Then you have Will Fries, who in the 2023 season, he really broke out. He was having a great season. And in 2024, he looked like he was going to be on pace for an even better one. Then he broke his leg in week 4 and he was out for the season. Another addition, right? That's how the Vikings were able to get him cheaper. And then Donovan Jackson, he is the Vikings' first-round pick out of Ohio State, the Ohio State University, whatever, who has impressed at guard. He's been doing well. He could be the weakness since he's not as big as, he probably like, linemen get skinnier during the combine. But these are good. The Vikings also invested heavily into that line. You can see they're really putting in an effort to protect J.J. McCarthy. These guys are all very strong, and the depth behind them isn't bad too. Like Blake Brandel, who was a starter, is now the backup. They have center and waiting right behind. The Vikings' offensive line is honestly really good too, and they don't have the weakness. Their tackles are elite, and as long as they're healthy, the guards and center are very good too. It's certainly no Braxton on there, right? In terms of running backs, the Vikings added Jordan Mason because while Aaron Jones had a pretty good season, I think it was his most yards from scrimmage out of all his careers, all his years playing in the football league, you could tell that injuries kind of weighed on him, especially towards the end. Well, they brought in Jordan Mason, who's a much more of a power back from the Niners, to kind of split the load 50-50. All reports out of training camp and coaches' statements indicate it's going to be 50-50, with Jordan Mason being the strong runner and just helping Aaron Jones not have to pull so much weight. The Kevin O'Connell, for every year that he's been coaching, has said he wants to focus on the run game. This year, he says the same thing. So, while the running backs look good, we'll see, right? The Vikings' running game has not been good under Kevin O'Connell. We need to see what changes. But in terms of talent and player-wise personnel, they're very good as well, right? I struggle to find weaknesses in a fully healthy Vikings offense. As for comparing the two, quarterbacks, I already said is going to be a wash. Wide receivers, without Jordan Addison, I think it's a lot closer than many people would like to admit. Right, we got Justin Jefferson, who, look, DJ Moore's good. He's not Justin Jefferson, right? Justin Jefferson's much better than DJ Moore. Rome Odunze, he's a very solid wide receiver too. And comparing him to the Vikings' new wide receiver too, in Adam Thielen, for just the first 3 games, it's close, right? You can say, oh, Adam Thielen's ancient. He's got all of these years on him. But last year, when healthy, he put up very good stats. He was putting up wide receiver 1 stats. He got injured a bit. So I honestly still think Adam Thielen is better, just comparing the averages per game of last year. I think the Vikings take the lead in the first 2. And then wide receivers 3 and 4, I do think the Bears are better. But if you take wide receivers 1 and 2 skill-wise over wide receivers 3 and 4, I think the Vikings have better wide receivers. Tight ends, TJ Hawkinson and Josh Oliver are really good. I think TJ Hawkins is better than Cole Kmet. If Colson Loveland turns out to be this beast behemoth, then yeah, maybe the Bears can have a better tight end group, but it's still close because TJ Hawkinson is no slouch. Josh Oliver is no slouch. And then in terms of offensive line, I think this is where you really see the biggest difference, right? I think the Vikings just, they don't have a weakness, right? They don't have a guy you can point to, he's the one we're going to bully, right? I think the Vikings offense is just, it's slightly better at everything, and that just makes them better. And if you're a Bears fan, I know you're going to be complaining, screaming, hey, you're such a homer bias. I promise the defense will not be like this. Okay, I just think in the offense-wise, the Vikings have better players. But defense, it's quite the opposite. Right, I said offense. Both of the offenses were very similarly styled. Right, good all around. Defense is a different story to me. We go over, right? I think the Bears, their secondary is very strong, right? Their head cornerback, Jalen Johnson, one of the best, top 5. I think he has a lot of skill and talent. Jalen Johnson, again, another underrated player. I think all of these players, they're not talked about enough, right? Then quarterback 2, Kyler Gordon, incredibly solid, also very good, right? Then they got safeties Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, right? They're a good tandem of young and old, right? Like, they're capable of a lot. They can support the corners and the high, low. They're good, right? Now, Tyreek Stevenson leaves a lot to be desired, but it's not like Braxton, right? Tyreek Stevenson can be hidden, right? Cornerback 3 is not going to get you killed because cornerback 3 is not going to be put up against Justin Jefferson, right? That's okay. It's all right for the cornerback 3 to be not on the level of the others, right? And honestly, I think their cornerback 3 is better than the Vikings CB3, but we'll get on that, right? So their secondary is elite, right? They're gonna give the Vikings pass catchers some trouble, absolutely, and they're safe. Their linebackers are good too, right? You got Tremaine Edmonds and T.J. Edwards. They're also underrated. They've been, I think these two might be the best linebacker duo in the entire NFL, right? They remind me of 2017 Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, and that's high praise. Coming from a Vikings fan. Now, there are flaws in the defense. It's not like the offense where it's just good on average everywhere. The pass rush. I waited till last. The Bears pass rush is not great. They have names, right? Grady Jarrett and Montez Sweat. Those guys used to be really good, but if you take the past couple years, you can see there's a noticeable downturn in their skill and their abilities. They're not bad players, but last year they were one of the worst pass rushing teams in the league. And against that Vikings offensive line, they're going to be asking a lot of the corners, in my opinion. I think they're going to want Jalen Johnson's crew, basically, to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, the run stopping isn't bad. And last year, for the first half of the season, the Bears defense was elite. It was scary. Now, it did drop off later on as the players, I think, like Montez Sweat and Grady Jarrett, since they're older, they can't keep up the same quality of play. This is week 1, so they're going to be playing well. I think they can just get past the issue. You can maybe scheme some rush packages. They can really give the Vikings fits. But they're going to need to have more step up from their pass rushers. Because, again, Jalen Johnson's good. Telling him to cover Justin Jefferson for extended periods of time is not going to work out. It's not going to work out with any cornerback. Maybe Pat Surtain, but come on. It's Justin Jefferson. He's always doubled or maybe triple teamed. So I think the Bears defense is really hoping that they can coach a step up from their pass rushers, but everything else I think is elite, right? I think really they can be cohesive. I think Dennis Allen is a great defensive coordinator, and he can really pull a lot more than most people would out of this team, out of this defense. Now, speaking of defensive coordinators, the Vikings also have a pretty good one, right? Brian Flores last year gave quarterbacks fits, especially young ones, all right? Caleb Williams has to be on the top on his A game because he's got the whole disguise everyone at the front and then just back off, right? So what does he have to work with? Well, they're the opposite of the Bears. The complete opposite. Their cornerbacks, their secondary consists of safety Harrison Smith, Theo Jackson, Jay Ward, and Josh Metellus. Now those, they're solid. They're not like game breaking, but they're good, right? Harrison Smith in 2017 was game breaking, but he's older now. He's not the same guy. He's still good, but he's not going to shut down like wide receivers. My issue with the Vikings secondary stems from the cornerback position. Right now, they only have 4 cornerbacks on the roster. 4. One injury away from having undrafted free agent Dwight McGlothern having extended amounts of snaps. 2 injuries away from just not having enough cornerbacks. Right? That's a recipe for failure. Right? Cornerback 1 is solid. He's not as good as Jalen Johnson, but Byron Murphy, he got a big deal. The Vikings chose him over Cam Bynum in this free agency. They had to pick. They didn't have enough cap for everything they wanted. But they re-signed Byron Murphy, who's good. He's going to get solid CB1 play. After that, it gets suspicious. Right? Cornerback 2 is Isaiah Rodgers, who he's kind of Brian Flores' pet project, but he wasn't even a starting cornerback for his team last year. Now, that team was the Eagles, but he's never been a starting cornerback. Now he's asked to take cornerback 2 snaps. Then cornerback 3, y'all might know this name. We're all familiar with him. Jeff Okudah, all-time cornerback bust of the Lions. He was picked 3 overall in the Jefferson draft. He is on the Vikings now, and they are expecting him to take starting level snaps. Jeff Okudah. Now, reports out of camp are that he's been playing well, but it's training camp. You will hear whatever, right? These beat writers want to see the best out of their players. They're going to talk good about them. You're never going to hear them say, this suit is garbage, right? So, these guys can get torn to shreds, right? Like, I think DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, they're going to give them all they can handle and more, if we're being completely honest. There's not going to be... They're going to get open pretty quick. Now, it isn't all doom and gloom, though, because even though they're going to get open pretty quick, they might still not get the chance to get the ball. Simply because the Vikings' defensive line is ridiculous. Enough so that I would say Andrew Van Ginkel, their second-team All-Pro, might not even be the third best player on that line. Right? The Vikings went out and they completely reshaped that, right? Last year, Jonathan Grenard broke out a little bit. He's looking like he's going to break out now, right? Now, all players in training camp get highlighted. They're all told, oh, they're looking good, they're looking good. But Grenard is one of those players that everyone has made an emphasis to tell you, this guy looks like a man on a mission. If I'm a Bears fan, that's the guy on the defense I want to be looking towards. He's looking to take a huge leap this year. Andrew Van Ginkel, 2 pick sixes last year. He was second-team All-Pro. He's a good player, right? Dallas Turner, also, he's looking to take a step up. He sat behind. I mean, you're going to sit behind Grenard and Van Ginkel, but he's there. Brian Flores has talked about how he wants to rush in waves. So you take one player out once he gets tired, new one in, just as good, right? Then the Vikings brought on Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and have kind of a name that you already know, or Vikings fans might already know, Jalen Redmond. He beat out Harrison Phillips for that, I guess, tackle position, just in the middle. So this is a very scary team on the line. They're going to give them all they can handle, and I think for the most part, they will be able to handle it, the Bears offensive line, but again, Braxton Jones, he's the guy to look towards, right? The Vikings also have linebackers Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace. Ivan Pace is a very good run stopper. I think he might be needed because if I'm the Bears, I'm going to run it right down their throats since Jalen Redmond is kind of a little bit of a weak link, but I still think he's really good. And Blake Cashman, who I think he's not as good as Tremaine Edmonds, but I think he's kind of like in between him and TJ Edwards. I think he's good. Blake Cashman doesn't get talked about enough. He's kind of like the silent leader. But it's a solid, like pass rushing group Run stopping, they were top 5 last year in just blocking. Now they lost Harrison Phillips, but that's because he got beat out. Harrison Phillips is a great run stopper. We'll see how Jalen Redmond is. We know he's a good pass rusher, though. He had sacks in like the one game he started. And it's a lot, right? If you're going to compare defenses, they're inverses, right? The Bears have a great secondary, poor line, and good linebackers. The Vikings have a garbage secondary and a great line and good linebackers. When I compare the talent of the two, honestly, I'd probably give it to the Bears just because that cornerback room of the Vikings is not where it needs to be. Now, I think it's a lot closer than you think because I think the Vikings' defensive line is much better than the Bears' pass rush. But the Bears' pass rush, they're going to be at full strength, right? Grady Jarrett and Montez Sweat haven't played a full season's worth of games. They have got this entire offseason to feel good. We're going to get at least 1 to 2 quarters of peak Grady Jarrett and Sweat. That is scary to me. Defense-wise, but it's close. It's not a definitive, I think the Vikings are not like the offense, but I just think the Vikings are better. I think both of these defenses have pathways on being the more dominant unit on the field. All right, so I'm re-recording this part because I accidentally muted myself. I move my hands around a lot. I guess I accidentally tapped the mute button right there. Oh well. Where was I? I was talking about how I think the Vikings offense is just straight up better than the Bears. I think the Bears defense is slightly better than the Vikings defense because the Vikings cornerback room is bunk, right? I don't care how much better the Vikings defensive line is than the Bears defensive line, and it is much better. I think just having such a poor cornerback room, poor secondary, like the Bears is going to be slightly better. Having said that, I want to segue into how I think the game will play out. I think the Bears have an avenue to victory, and it's pretty evident to me what that avenue to victory is. It's short passes, the short game. They do well in the short game. They can really expose Brian Flores. Last year, the last 2 games of the season, you saw Jared Goff and Matt Stafford tear that Vikings defense to shreds. Right? They didn't have time to get set into their positions. Immediately snap ball, pass throw, catch, 6-7 yards, chip. They had no answers. Now, there's a reason only Matt Stafford and Jared Goff did that. It's because they are experienced veteran quarterbacks that were able to handle the pressure and get that ball off. I think if it was just Caleb Williams, he would not be capable of doing this. I don't care how good he is. But he has Ben Johnson, who was the offensive coordinator for that Lions team that tore the Vikings defense to shreds. So, if Ben Johnson can develop schemes that just short, quick, first read options, they can win. Their offense can do damage to the Vikings defense. That is something that I think is a weakness, right? DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, they can get open against the Vikings' weak corners and just chip. That's how they can win, especially with their spectacular guards and center. Impose the will of the rush game. DeAndre Swift can have a good game. Right? You take the Vikings' spectacular line. One thing you'll notice is missing is Harrison Phillips. Harrison Phillips was one of the best run blockers in the league. He's not there anymore because he got beat out in camp by Jalen Redmond, and the Vikings traded him away. Jalen Redmond, though, is a primarily pass rushing tackle, or as primarily pass rushing as you can get. So if I'm the Bears, he's the weak link. Jonathan Hargrave is also more of a pass rusher than a run stopper. So target those two. If the Bears can impose their will, especially early, that can do a lot of damage. I think that's a weakness that the Vikings don't really realize that well, they obviously probably know, and they have their own mitigation, but at the end of the day, that's what killed them in the past, and it can still kill them now, right? When you've got Jeff Okudah out there against Luther Burden, if he is good, that can be a recipe for success for the Bears. The Vikings, similarly, their offensive strategy would be, well, actually not similarly, intermediate game. Play the intermediate game. The wide receivers are going to get open, and the Vikings are going to have time. They're going to have time because of the Bears' weak pass rush. They have their revamped O-line, but they're not going to be tested nearly as much as the Bears' O-line. Right? Let J.J. McCarthy get in a flow, do what he's comfortable with. Right? In Michigan, he played really well in the intermediate game. He played really well. But they have points of right. But again, J.J. McCarthy has to be able to handle the lights. Right? Both of these teams have a big point of fault. That's their quarterbacks. If Caleb Williams gets rattled, if he can't get the ball off quickly, which last year he had a very high time to throw. If he can't get it out quickly, he's going to get sacked. He's going to get rattled. The game will be done. J.J. McCarthy, the lights are too bright. He hasn't played in a year. He hasn't run a Kevin O'Connell offense. He did run a pro-style offense in Michigan, but that is not Kevin O'Connell's offense. It is much more simple. And the last time the lights were really bright, he won. They won the national championship, but it wasn't because of McCarthy. He did not have that fantastic of a game. He's playing Monday Night Football week 1 with the world watching. He has his haters out there. Can he handle it? Especially coming off a torn meniscus. Maybe he'll get rattled more easy. Both of their quarterbacks are going to need to play up to expectations. They don't have to be Joe Burrow, but they have to meet the expectations of their team. If they cannot do that, their entire team will fall apart and they will lose. It is ultimately, we're going to learn a lot from this game. There will be overreactions, but we will kind of know where these teams are at and set a good expectation, reasonable expectation for the future. They're similarly talented. Their coaches, I think, are good. We're going to see how it goes. My cats are running. Speaking of, time for predictions. You might be wondering, why are you speaking of cats, right? Well, there's going to be 3 predictors in this video. Myself, Charlie, and Eliza. Charlie and Eliza are my 2 cats. My opinion doesn't really matter, but I'm the only one that speaks English. So I will give explanations on my prediction. For the cats, you're just going to have to trust what they say is correct. Words of advice, Charlie's the intelligent one. Eliza's the stupid one. She's not very intelligent. She's running around. She's got zoomies. But they will be choosing, right? I'm going to give them a choice of treat because cats deserve treats even if they're bad kitties. Eliza, she's a good kitty, but right now she's kind of going through like a little teenage phase. She's just a kitten. Charlie's an adult. He treats her well. But I'm going to give them 2 choose. One will label the Vikings. One will be labeled with the Bears. And they're going to choose. Whichever one they choose, they win. Now, my prediction, I think the Vikings are going to win. I think, you know, Bears fans aren't going to like what I have to say, and I respect that, right? You want to see your team do well. And they're a talented team. I think there's a lot of potential for a lot of wins. Unfortunately, the AFC North, or NFC North, we got a gauntlet of a schedule. I'm going to be playing the entire AFC North, so Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, shared opponents. We'll be going through it. There's a lot of good teams that we're going to have to play, including like the Packers and the Lions. But I think getting started, I think the Bears are just going to be a little overwhelmed by what the Vikings have to offer. I think they're a better team. I think the Vikings, most of the players already know the system. The Bears' offense is a completely new system. They're going to have to get some kinks figured out. It's just a matter of playing football and learning. I think they're going to give it their all, especially because it's in Soldier Field. They're going to have an advantage, but if I'm a Bears fan, I'm upset that week 1 is in Soldier. I know you want to see your team for week 1, but I would want as many division games at home in the cold in December. Instead, now they're going to be playing Minnesota in potentially important games at US Bank in the cold. They lose that advantage. But I think even with Soldier Field, the Vikings are more prepared. They've got a more established team. They're asking less of McCarthy. McCarthy's going to have more time to throw. He's still got Justin Jefferson. Caleb Williams is going to be rushed very often. I see him fighting for his life. Right? He's not going to have a moment to rest. If he's going to win, he's going to need to get into a rhythm quickly in an offensive system that he doesn't fully know, with a head coach that is going to be asking a lot of him. I don't see the Bears being able to do that. I don't see Williams being able to carry that load yet. Maybe he can learn. But based off last year, and Eberflus year, admittedly, it's not enough. We'll see where that leads them. I think the Vikings are going to win. Call it 28-17. I think that'll be the final score. I think the Bears have the potential to be a really good team, but not quite. They're not quite there yet. They need a better defensive line. The Eagles have proved how important that is. The cornerback situation is good. The Vikings need a better cornerback situation as well. I don't think they can do damage unless all of the players step up, which is a big ask. But I think right now they're in a better position. I think they're going to come in, and I think they're going to win. Right. Now on to the important predictions. The Cats. Okay. So for the first prediction, we have Charlie, because he's a good kitty, and he deserves to get the trues first. We have the purple true for the Vikings, and the yellow true for the Bears. Whichever one he picks, that will be his little kitty cat prediction. Right? Look at him. Here he is. Okay, well. Now, what we're going to do is going to put them behind, and then we're going to put them back out here so that he has to be reset. Alright, Charlie, which one do you want? Lazy, come on, move over. Okay, we'll open them both up. And set this to the side. Set this one off to the side. Alright, buddy. Which one do you want? Oh, wow, he picks the Bears. He's an orange kitty. Okay, you can end this video. Quickly start. We're back. Liza had technical difficulties. Oh my god, okay. We're just gonna whichever one. Oh, yep, and she picked the Vikings pretty much unanimously. Okay, Eliza, you get. She doesn't even want the truth. She's just in for the love of the game. Okay, come on. You want to. Yeah. She's gonna get half a true. Alright, so there you have it. Charlie picked the Bears. Eliza picked the Vikings. I picked the Vikings. We'll see how that turns out. And finally, I also write. It's completely free. If you want to go check it out, I'll have it linked. It's just a Substack. It's not very good, but you want to give it a look-see. It's there. All right. Till next time.